the 1,400 is cash and the 4,000 is in bank. So now the first question, you're going to start with your date, which means you have January 1st. Then your particular is going to be what? Capital. Then you write capital. Then the question says 1,400 naira cash in hand. Then you have cash in hand 1,400. Then in bank you have 4,000. Now the next question is on the 4th January we have cash sales, and when we say cash sales, which means it is an inflow, which means the owner of the business has made a sale, so which means a value or money is coming, which means you're going to put it on the what? On the debit side, which means you have what? 4th January, then you have January 4th, then the particular is going to be what? Sales, because you have make a what? Cash sales, then your particular will be sales. And from the question, cash sales, cash, which means you have make a sales by cash, then you're going to put the 6,000 under the cash column. Then under cash, then you write 6,000. Then we go to the next question. On the 6th January, paid wages in cash 1,000. When you paid, which means you're giving out, which means you paid for something, which means you're giving out the value, you're giving out the money you paid for what? For wages. Then it's going to be on the what? On the credit side, because credit side you're giving out. Now you go for start with your date, then we have January 6th, then you said January 6th, then your particular is going to be wages, because you paid wages, you paid for wages, then you write wages, and the wages you paid cash, so the 1,000 is going to be under the what? Cash column. Then you have 1,000. Then you go to the next question. On the 9th January, purchases of goods with check 3,000, which means the owner of the business, or you purchase a goods 3,000, which means you're giving out, which means you're going to put it on the what? On the credit side, because you make a purchase of goods by what? By check, which means we have what? January 9th. Then you go January 9th. Then you have what? You have purchases. Then you have purchases. Purchases of goods, and the purchases of goods is with what? With check, which means a receipt. Then it's going to be under what? It's going to be under the bank column. Then you write 3,000 on the bank column. Then we go to the next question. On the 12th January, receive from James by check. Receive from James by check, which means it is an inflow, which means you're receiving a value from who? From James, which means you're taking it what? On the debit side, because debit side is the receiver, which means on the January 12th, then we have January 12th, you receive a check from James, then your particular is going to be what? James. Then your particular will be James. Then you receive check, then it's going to be under what? Bank, because it is a what? It is a receipt. Then you're going to put what? The 3,000 under bank. Then we have 3,000 under bank. Then we have the next question. January 17, paid rent with cash. Paid is an outflow, which means you're paying for a rent. Then it's going to be on the what? On the credit side, because you're paying for what? For your rent, which means you're giving out money, and you're paying for what? For your rent. Then it's going to be what? On the credit side, which means on the January 17, which means you write your date, January 17. Then your particular would be what? Rent. Okay, your particular will be rent, and you paid the rent with what? Cash 500. Then the 500 is going to be what? Under the cash column, because you paid the rent cash. then 500 under cash column. Then we go to the next question. On the 20th January, withdrew cash from bank. Withdrew cash from bank, which means this one is contra entry. And what do we mean by contra entry? It is a transaction that will affect or that will appear in both the debit side and the credit side. Okay, now this question says withdrew cash from bank. Withdrew cash from bank. Okay, now let's look at this. Now let's start with the debit side. Now the date is 20th January 20th. Now the question says withdrew cash from bank. Withdrew cash from bank. Now this is how it is. Now your particular is going to be what? Is going to be bank. Now let's look at this. Then you have what? Bank. Now if your particular is going to be bank and the figure is going to be what? Under the what? Is going to be under cash. Okay, now the figure is 900. That is the value. Okay, under what? Under cash, you write 900. Now remember what I told you. The contra entry is going to appear both on the debit side and on the credit side. Okay, now for this is for the debit side. Now let's look at the credit side. Now if you're going to record on the credit side, it's the same dates, but they are going to appear on both the debit side and the credit side. Now you write the same date, January 20th. Now your particular is going to be cash. Now since your particular is cash, then the value or the figure is going to be under what? Under bank. Then you write 900 under bank. Then you indicate on your folio, which means you write C. That is telling you this transaction is what? Is contra entry. Now get the question. Withdrew cash from bank. Now on the credit side, you're giving out. Now which means you're withdrawing money from the bank and the bank is giving you money cash. Where did you get the cash? From the bank. From the bank. How did you get the money from the bank? The bank, you receive cash from the bank. That is what? The contra entry, which means it will appear both on the debit side and on the credit side. Okay, now let's go to the next question. Now the next question, cash sales paid directly into the bank. Cash sales paid directly into the bank. This question is still contra entry because it has the cash there and the bank. And I said contra entry is a transaction that will appear on both the debit side and the credit side. And this transaction, they say what? The cash sales paid directly